The First Descendants open crossplay beta started a few days ago, and like many of you, I jumped in to see what it's all about and to try it out for myself. After completing the available main story and doing some of the other side stuff, I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm pretty comfortable sharing my thoughts about the game. As this is still a beta, I understand that things can change, so my opinions are mostly about what we've seen so far. This game is a looter shooter like Warframe and Destiny, so brace yourselves because I will be comparing it quite a bit. Starting off, I'm liking the general feel of the game. For me, it's fun to run around doing these missions while you nuke everything with your build. The guns have good sound design, they feel meaty, and they've got good impact and nice animations. For example, the hand cannons, they shoot a little slower, but they hit hard, and you feel that while you're playing the game. There's also a nice variation of guns to choose from, with the archetypes feeling a little closer to Destiny, so you've got things like your standard assault rifles, shotguns, snipers, SMGs, LMGs, you get the point. I liked just about every gun that I used except the power ammo shotgun because despite the big DPS number on the tooltip, it just felt like it was shooting peas. Otherwise, I really don't have any complaints about the guns in the First Descendant. When it comes to movement, I'm really enjoying the grappling hook, although sometimes it feels a little rigid. I'm still getting used to how it maneuvers, but it is fun to get around with it. It's easy to activate, and for the most part, it does what I want it to do. It's worth mentioning that I play on mouse and keyboard, so maybe it's a little easier on controller. Despite that, the movement isn't bad. I find that I can chain grapple pretty well to move around, and some characters even have movement abilities in their kits, so it's not too bad, although I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss the bullet jump. Now, obviously, in a game like this, when it comes to combat, the guns themselves only make up half of the combat. The other half is the characters. So far, I've played Ajax to level 40, and I've leveled Valby to 30-something, so I haven't really played too many different characters, but I am having a fun time with them. I'm happy that I picked Ajax as my starter because jumping in the air and Hulk smashing down on a group of enemies is not easily beat. From what I've seen on other characters, the skills are visually appealing and just as fun to use. Valby can make a pool of water and teleport to another area, or even turn into water and move through enemies while applying a debuff and then suck them all up with her ultimate. And although I haven't played Kyle, he has an ability that's basically Thunder Crash Titan from Destiny 2. So the abilities are not only good looking, but they're also fun, and as is expected, they synergize pretty well with their kits and give you a lot of opportunities to really build into them. Now, not every ability is going to be the best, but that's just the nature of how the kits work. I think that the First Descendant has done a good job of making the combat feel fun and engaging, and I'm excited to try out a few more Descendants before the beta ends. Speaking of which, getting new Descendants in this game is very similar to how you get new frames in Warframe. You get the materials needed to create the parts, and once you make all 4 parts, you can then craft the actual character. And like in Warframe, there is a build timer. I'm familiar with this system, as I'm sure many of you are, but personally, I feel like there might have been an opportunity here to make this better and just get rid of the crafting time in general. It looks like the craft times right now are 6 hours for a part and 12 hours for a full character, which is significantly lower than Warframe's 72 hours per frame and 12 hours per part. I can only hope that the crafting times will remain as they are in the beta once the full game releases, and if that's the case, I'll be pretty happy. Moving over to another really important part of the gameplay experience, we've got the missions. There's the missions related to the main story in which you do a variety of different things from defending a point to defending a point, or sometimes even defending a point. Obviously, I'm exaggerating here, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the mission types during the actual story itself are pretty standard, but there's a lot of room for the devs to add some more stuff down the line. When it comes to these type of games where the main thing to do is grind, I can distract myself from the mission variety because of how fun the combat is, and this game is no exception. I consider this to be my zero brain time in which I go into autopilot with some music on and just focus on clearing my screen of mobs. So even though there isn't a crazy mission variety, at least in the main story, I didn't feel it too much. Again, this is just the beta, so there could be a lot more stuff in the future zones that we haven't been to, so it's worth keeping that in mind. I did like the wave defense missions, which felt a little more like Warframe's endless missions, because it just throws enemies at you, and the fact that these missions last a little longer lets you really use your build. It's more chaotic, and the increased mob density just makes it more fun. I think the biggest standout in this game so far has been the Colossus interceptions. These are the ones where you go in and you fight a big boss. So far, the first 2 were an absolute joke, and I don't even know if they had mechanics, but the third one smacked my party around and we couldn't finish it. I also like the Monster Hunter mechanic where you can rodeo the Colossus and do some nice damage and get a stagger phase for your team. These guys also drop parts that you'll need to craft your Descendants, so they'll be a vital part of the gameplay later on. When it comes to the First Descendant systems, I wanted to talk about a few different things. The first one is the loot. The loot isn't anything crazy. It reminds me of Destiny in that when you kill yellow bar enemies or bosses, they have a little loot explosion, which is satisfying to see. In this game, you get a ton of loot, so your inventory will fill up really fast, but thankfully clearing it is super easy with the buttons to mass dismantle. The game also has a mastery system, and if you've played Warframe, then you know exactly what this is. Basically, it's a form of account progression based on how much you've leveled different characters and weapons. It pushes you to try different gear, and in return, when you level up, you get more mod capacity, inventory space, and some other nice things. Now, I feel like I've gone long enough without talking about the mod system. It's like they took the one from Warframe and just popped it into a new UI. I personally don't dislike this though because I liked it in Warframe. I think it's a good system. It's build enabling and it rewards player experimentation and min-maxing. That being said, I'm not a fan of the UI for this in the First Descendant. It's a lot more compact, and maybe it's because it's early on and I'm less familiar with it, but it's harder to tell what I'm looking at. You can get a lot more utility and damage out of your kits with this system though, so I fully welcome it. I also am a fan of the gearing system that the game has. You've got your 3 guns on the left, which can all be modded, and on the right side of your character screen, you've got your reactor and some other parts that you can swap out to boost your defensive stats, as well as your skill damage. And this is a nice way to further add on to that build crafting. Going back to the Colossus interceptions, you'll get these amorphous orbs while you're playing, and you open them by doing the corresponding interception mission. Each orb is a different drop pool, which will give you parts for guns or Descendants. This system really reminds me of Warframe's Void Fissures, in which you run relics to get prime parts. So as you can see, there are a lot of similarities to Warframe in these systems, but I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. Lastly, you guys know I have to talk about customization. I know this is a really basic thing to bring up, but I like the visual progression of my character and the ability to change things up. You might have noticed that throughout the gameplay in this video, my Ajax changed colors several times. This is just how I enjoy these games, so for me, customization is very important. I feel like the First Descendant does a good job with this. Not only have I been able to make my character different visually, but also with building through the mod system. It's hard to tell how it's going to look in the final release, but if they give us starting colors and skins like they have in the beta, then it'll be fine. I'm a fan of the color system, which reminds me of Anthem a bit, and skins look cool, especially the higher tier ones. In the beta right now, you can get armor and a helmet for reaching level 40 on a Descendant, and I like that as you can't change your colors otherwise. I really do hope that this remains a thing for the full release, as it would be a nice alternative to just buying one of the recolored skins in the shop. Now, on a surface level, the overall feel that I get from the First Descendant is that it takes some of the best things from its competitors in the genre and puts them all together into one amalgamation of a game. I know that there were a lot of comparisons in here, but it's hard not to with how similar a lot of these systems are. Obviously, not everything is one-to-one, but it definitely feels like they borrowed some ideas. A few comments from my previous video mentioned that the game feels like a reskinned Warframe, and honestly, I'm inclined to agree. Now, that's not me saying that this is bad. You can take that however you want, just that it should feel familiar if you've played other games in this genre before. I feel like this is the let me copy your homework, I'll make sure to change it up of looter shooters. After playing the beta, I will say that I'm more excited for the full release of this game. I think it's a solid game, but we'll have to wait and see how much staying power it has. At the moment, I'm still making up my mind on what exactly differentiates this game from the others and why people prefer to play this over something like Warframe or even Destiny, but that's not me saying it's bad, just some of my overall opinions on it. With that being said though, make sure you drop a like if you enjoy the video, and if you've played the beta, let me know your thoughts on it. I want to hear what you guys are thinking and how everyone's feeling about the game. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.